All right, good morning, Crush fans. It's Bill McConnell here, the head coach of the Cortland Crush, along with Dave Maloney, the senior director of sports marketing for the NYCBL. Our special guest this morning is head coach Kevin Tomasiewicz, University of Wisconsin Oshkosh. And good morning to Kevin. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Pretty good. Dave, how are you doing?
Great, Bill. Thanks for having me.
No problem. But Kevin, we've always taken players from you. You've been very generous sending players to the Crush at NYCBL. And thought we'd start this morning a little bit about you, though, the collegiate player, your background, your success, and then your professional career. You have a record-setting career, at University of Wisconsin Whitewater, two-time All-American, 35 victories, an unbelievable ERA, but an unbelievable amount of innings you threw there throughout your career. Tell us a little bit about your career and your World Series victories.
Yeah, so I went to Whitewater. Coming out of college, I really wasn't recruited. Had a couple of small Division III private institutions that showed some interest. My high school, I'm from suburbs of Chicago, is about 2,200, 2,300 people. So I didn't want to go to a small school at that point. I wanted to go to a little bit larger environment. So I kind of recruited myself to Whitewater. Coach came down and saw me play and said, "Yeah, we'll bring you on up and give you an extended tryout type deal." Went up there, had a great time. I actually punted and kicked for a couple of days on the football team until they made me cut watermelon and mix the Gatorade for the team on one of the first practices. So I decided that football wasn't my best route, so I ended up going the baseball route. But had a pretty good career in my opinion there. I started off with Coach Miller. Coach Vodenlich was the assistant coach, and then after 2 years, Coach Miller retired. Coach Vodenlich took over, and really just I think John was a coach that I really needed. We're both very strong personalities, and he kind of pushed me to be the best player that I can. I get motivated by coaches kind of getting on me and challenging me, and I think he did that. We play, I think most people know from the Division III side of things, we're probably one of the top 2 or 3 conferences, arguably in the country. We have professional players coming out all the time. So, we started to build our program. My first year there, we were 26-17. My second year, we ended up going to the regional. We lost to Oshkosh on their field in the 10th inning. Oshkosh ended up going to the World Series that year. And then the following year, we kind of toppled Oshkosh a little bit, got ourselves to the World Series. We lost to Eastern Connecticut State in the semifinal game. And then finally, my last year, we ended up getting to the World Series and ended up winning it. You mentioned the number of innings and the number of victories I've had. It's interesting. Most people don't know when you look at the state of Wisconsin, we really only play, especially back in 2005. We played most of our games from March 17th on. That's kind of what our schedule was at Whitewater. So we crammed in a bunch of different games, and I think that last year I threw 112-ish innings. I think Greg threw 112-ish innings. We were kind of the 1-2 punch. I think we just kind of said we were going to take the bull by the horns and lead the team to wherever we could go. And I think Greg had 12 wins that year. I had 15 out of the 40 that we had as a program. So 45, I believe. And so it was just a matter of us kind of, really kind of looking, in the past and saying, hey, we don't want to be sitting on the bench when the season ends. And I think the two of us really said, that's our goal, is to win the title, and we're going to carry the team.
Well, here's one of the most impressive things when looking at your record, when you compare playing just, 15 years ago to today, 253.1 innings pitched and 232 strikeouts. Amazing in a college career. And from that, here's a D3 guy who you and I have talked about the bias there a little bit. You get drafted to 26th round by the Mets. Did you expect that?
So I kind of did. Going into college, I had a really good senior season in high school, and my high school coach told me that I garnered some interest with regards to possibly getting drafted out of high school or later on. And every year that I played, I've always had somebody that was getting looked at professionally. My junior year of high school, we had a young man get drafted by the Pirates. My senior year, I was the number 2 on our high school pitching staff. The other guy got drafted in the 19th round by the New York Yankees. So I never was the main guy to really kind of be getting looked at. And so as we kind of went through the process and we got into my sophomore year, I had a really good year. My junior year, I put a lot of pressure on myself. And I had a terrible start to the season. We came back from Florida. I had a 27 ERA. I said, there's no way I'm ever going to get drafted at this point. And so we just continued to play out the year. Nothing happened. Once again, two of the pitchers on my team, Brady Endel and Ryan Callahan, both were taken. Brady was a 10th rounder by the Atlanta Braves. Ryan Callahan was a free agent signed by, I believe, the San Francisco Giants. Or the Twins, one of the two. Ended up playing for 2 different organizations. And then my senior season, I kind of went into the season going, whatever happens, happens. I had gotten some interest from the Baltimore Orioles. I gotten some interest from a couple other teams as well too. Nothing major. The other guy that was pitching, Greg Reinhardt, everybody was coming to do him. We were doing the psychological evaluations. They were taking him to dinner. They were meeting mom and dad. I'm sitting off to the side getting a letter basically, hey, fill this out. So as we started the process, I didn't really think much of it, Bill. And then all of a sudden we got to a couple of games, and Coach Foldenlich was very unique in the way we did things. Because I was a senior, I always started the first game. Greg always started the second game. Well, the scouts would come early to watch maybe the end of our first game, and then they would watch Greg. Well, there was a point in time where I threw a shutout against Oshkosh. I had like 10 or 11 strikeouts. The following weekend, I took a no-hitter into the 7th inning. And then the following weekend, I pitched another 6, 7, 8 innings in the game. And at that point, the scouting bureau came down to me. I'm talking to my father down the right field line. The scouting bureau guy comes up and he says, I've seen you pitch 3 consecutive weekends. Fantastic. You throw hard enough. You're left-handed. Fill this out and get it back to me. As soon as I filled it out, got it back to him, that's when stuff started coming in the mail.
Yep.
I said, hey, this might be a possibility for me. And so at the end of the year, we win. We didn't hear anything. Myself nor Greg, and Greg was a high-round draft pick. He ended up being a 6th-round draft pick. We didn't hear much from anybody for a couple of weeks, and we played till the beginning of June, and then the draft, I believe, was about 2 weeks after our World Series. So I go home, and at that time, everything's on the internet, right? You're just sitting there watching the computer screen like we're doing now. And the first day goes by, nothing. Greg gets drafted, fantastic. The second day, all of a sudden, there were about 2 or 3 Division III pitchers that got drafted ahead of me. And I just got completely frustrated because I had better stats. I had known the guys. I thought I was a better pitcher. So I end up driving from my home, my parents' home in Illinois. I drive all the way back up to Whitewater. I'm sitting at the computer, and I'm frustrated at this point. And I said, you know what? It's the 26th round. I'm going to turn this off. And I said, but I'm going to wait for the Mets. And this is odds against true story. I go, I'm going to wait for the Mets because I've talked to Quincy on the phone. And 26th, boom, I get drafted. And next thing I know, my mom and dad's calling me. They're crying. I got all my buddies calling me. And it was just, I sat at the computer screen kind of staring at it saying, wow, like I'm a professional baseball player. And then like 2 minutes after that, it was, Kevin, you got to get this in. You got to get this in. The sports information director needs this. So everything kind of came together at once. And then we were on our way to the professional career and ended up playing in Brooklyn, which was one of the great experiences that I've ever had playing baseball. That's a great place to play baseball. And that was my first experience, number one, being in New York, but also playing in front of 10,000 people.
Yeah. Dave, do you want to follow that up with a question on the draft?
Yeah. So like Kevin, I played at Ithaca. It's very similar, right? Very historic programs. And you look at the history behind both of those programs, and you talk about baseball in Wisconsin, you talk about baseball in Midwest, talk about baseball in New York when it comes to Division III. And very similarly, besides me getting drafted, but we had each of the years that I played there, we ended up having pitchers as well signed, right?
Yep.
One made it all the way to AAA. So it's very interesting. I guess the question I have for you is, Why do you think, and we're going to get to a young man from Chapman out in California, just got drafted in the 3rd round. They had played in the NYCBL in 2018. But from your standpoint, why do you think sometimes, like, I mean, you didn't go 40th round. I mean, Mike Piazza went way farther than you did, right? Yeah. Why do you think sometimes Division III players get overlooked? Is it, and I'll let you answer that question.
I think it's the level of play. I think people, we're seeing less and less people at the Division III level get drafted because I think everybody's enamored with Division I baseball, to be honest with you. Whether that's good or bad for baseball, I don't know. Each person has their own individual perceptions on that. I know that, ESPN and Major League MLB Network, they've done a great job of advertising college baseball. I mean, back in 2005, you could not see any games on TV except maybe the or not even at that point, the regionals, and then the College World Series. Now, I mean, I remember last year we were doing a camp on a Sunday afternoon, and I walk in and my players that weren't working the camp were watching North Carolina versus somebody. And so, I think with the advent of velocity being so important now, sometimes we don't get the number of people that throw very hard at Division III. Okay, we get a sporadic few here and there, but your scouts are probably more for bang for their buck to go to a Division I game to see 6, 7, 8 guys that throw 89 plus, whereas now they're going to drive 400 miles or 300 miles to go see one guy from a Division III school, and maybe he's good, maybe he's not. The sad part about it is, though, in my opinion, is there are good players almost at every major Division III program. You're going to have a guy that could be in contention. Okay. We had a young man here, Colin Tremmel. He played in the Northwoods League for 2 years, 3 years he played in the Northwoods League. And he was a guy who, and I tell this to everybody, he was the best control pitcher I have ever had in my entire life. This guy could spot up a fastball, could spot up his slider. He developed a changeup. It took me 3 years to help him develop the changeup. We finally got it. But towards the end of his year, I kept asking the scouts in the area here, is he going to get drafted? Does he have a chance? Every scout told me he doesn't throw hard enough. He's a little light. And this is a kid that's 86 to 88 miles an hour. So I tell Colin, I say, you gotta throw harder. Whatever we can do, whether it be getting you on a more of a drive line, consistent program, changing your eating habits. I mean, we got down to the point where I was having Colin write what he's eating for food every day to see if he's getting enough protein to get bigger. Well, he ends up throwing 90 miles an hour the next year, comes and goes, nobody gets drafted, nobody signs him as a free agent. And this was a kid who was an All-American. And so I just think there's a little bit of a stigmatism because maybe you're not playing against the top level talent, that scouts are going to pass. They're going to take maybe the safer route a little bit to take some of those guys at the higher D1 games because they played against that high talent, and I think in the past, there's a lot of players that come out of Division III that are really good. And once they get there, they surprise a lot of people. If you look at the current state of WIAC guys, and I might be leaving a couple of guys out, but Lake Bacher at Whitewater, he's in AA right now. He was a guy that came to Whitewater. He was a great punter and kicker on their football team. He's 94 to 95 in AA for the Padres. Taylor Colway was a guy who almost hit 500 for the year at lacrosse. He's in AA for the Padres. Taylor's a teammate, Caleb Bosley. He's in, I believe, high A for the Padres, and one of their guys that's kind of rising a little bit. So when Division III people get the chance, they generally do very, very well, especially those high-end guys. So I think that it's just a little bit of it's a little bit of bias towards the Division I teams, and that's something that we have to deal with in recruiting at our level. Is hey, you're going to get the chance. If you're good, people are going to find you, and it's ultimately up to the coach as well too. And how you present your players and send videos out or tell a scout, hey, you need to come see this guy at this point. So hopefully eventually it'll get back to where it was in 2005 where we had more scouts at our games than maybe we do now. But in the end of it, a good player is a good player, and they're going to prove themselves once they get in.
Kevin, when you left professional baseball, you spent 4 years in the Mets organization. We've talked about that a little bit. and you coaching, and right now, give us a little time, and you spent a couple years, a couple colleges, but let's talk about your program, University of Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and you've been there. You started your 8th season this year, albeit cut short because of the pandemic. Tell us about the program that you have now, what you like about it, where you're going.
Yeah, so we have a storied past for Oshkosh baseball. If you look at, I mean, we were team of the decades back in the 90s. If you look at, when I got to the university, our outfield fence, a 16-foot fence. It's got a black windscreen on it, and then it has banners for every championship that they've been a part of. Well, the entire outfield fence is covered in championships, and so it's a storied past. And so I was at North Park University as an assistant coach. The job came open. It is the number one rival for my alma mater in Whitewater, and I got hired. And it was kind of almost a dream to say, hey, at 29 years old, I get to be at one of the better institutions for baseball in the country, and I get to come back to a conference that I know I'm very familiar with. The big difference between our institution and Whitewater's is Whitewater's in a town of 14,000 people, 12,000 people, and we're in an area of 100,000 people. So we're a little bit more urban, but we're very similar facility-wise. They just upgraded their facility a little bit here, but so we started. I took over the program when the old coach was let go. A lot of the players either had graduated, chose not to come back, or just weren't going to play anymore. So my first year I was hired in September 9th or 10th. So school had already started and I wasn't even hired yet. So we played with what we had. We finished 500 that year, a little bit below 500. And then the recruiting process really started at that point. My first year, I think I was on the phone 3 hours a night. Come play, come on. I'll give you a chance. That's basically what we're going to do. We're going to have a lot of playing time. We're going to rebuild. So we rebuilt the program in 3 years. And I tell everybody this, and I used this in one of my recruiting speeches a couple of years ago. During the time that I was building the program, my first year, 3 teams out of our conference made the regional. 1 went to the World Series in Whitewater. They won the World Series. My second year, 3 more teams again got to the regional. And then 2 teams went to the World Series. One of them finished second in lacrosse. And then the following year, lacrosse again went to the World Series. We had 2 teams out of the regional. So the first 3-4 years I was here, I'm playing not only against my competition, but the competition I'm playing against is the best in the country. And so that first year, and I know we had, Jesse was with you and Dylan was with you. Those guys learned on the job. They learned by losing, and we were really good against teams that we should have beaten, and we beat those teams. But we were very poor against the lacrosses, the Whitewaters, and the Points of the world. They were just a step ahead of us. And as our guys got older, they got stronger. We started competing. My third year here, we competed for that conference championship, and then finally we broke through. We got into the regional. We were in the regional championship game, and now we're just we're trying to rebuild again a little bit. We're a little bit young this past year. One of the negatives this year is with the pandemic canceling the season, we were starting 5 or 6 freshmen on the roster this year, and very, very talented group. And we're going to lose that whole year of just game experience, and that's going to be the killer. And then the other one is I don't think maybe 2 of my players are actually playing right now. One's in Iowa. He plays for his grandfather's summer team, but Iowa's high school season's going on, so they're fine out there. But none of the other leagues around the Chicago area or even in Wisconsin right now have started up. So we're going to have a little bit of adjustment coming back, but we have a talented group coming in again next year. And I think that we'll be where we were a couple of years ago, sooner rather than later.
Good. Dave.
So Kevin, I want to segue a little bit in going back. Obviously last week was the draft, and we know what's going on with MLB, and I think they're kind of at crossroads this week where they need to make a decision. I think everybody's starving for baseball, anything from youth baseball to amateur baseball, summer collegiate baseball, and we're part of the alliance with the New York Collegiate Baseball League. But I want to talk a little bit about some of the leagues that are going on right now. So the Florida League will be able to, they're going to begin here very soon. But I want to take a little bit of step back in how important, you just kind of mentioned it. We had a young man, Chapman University, right? When we talk about, WIAC, and we talk about the SUNY system here in New York and Cortland, and then you talk about the St. John Fishers and the Oswegos and the Ithacas, then down in Pennsylvania, the Keystones, all these teams that will end up, when you get to the World Series, seeing some of these familiar faces. So This young man, Nick Garcia, who actually was a third baseman at Chapman, right? Cal Lutheran's out there, ended up becoming, transitioning to a pitcher, getting drafted in the third round. And then not because I went to Ithaca, but just because Tim LaCastro, who's a young man from the Syracuse area where I'm at, played at Ithaca and is now on the big league roster, as last year, him and Trey Turner, the two fastest guys in the major leagues, right? But I want to talk about how important summer league baseball, you just mentioned it, and maybe a little bit back to your background, how important that is for the next level of a Division III player to get there, or to, like you mentioned, for the 5 freshmen, if they would have had that opportunity this summer, especially with the wooden bat.
Yeah, summer baseball is, it's. I think people underestimate how important it actually is. Okay, we want our guys to go play in collegiate leagues around the country. Okay, sometimes it's not feasible for some of our guys due to, hey, they got to work, they got to make money. We're a school that a lot of my guys, I bet you, 75% of my guys need to do some sort of income, have some sort of income to pay for their rent and stuff like that when they come back to school. Personally, for me, summer baseball is the reason that I think that I was drafted. So I played a year in the CICL, Central Illinois Collegiate League. I don't even know if that's still going on right now. I played in Bloomington Normal. Got a taste of playing against some Division I talent, Division II talent. The funny part is there were 4 Oshkosh players in that league as well too. So I got to know them a little bit, and it was close to home. It worked out really well for me. I thought that I got better. The following year, I recruited myself once again. I sent letters out to some leagues, and a couple of the Northwoods League teams came back to me, but Pete Christopher up at the Matsu Miners in Alaska League actually called, I believe, Tom Lechner, the old head coach at Oshkosh, and asked about me, and then called my head coach, John Voldenlich, and said, hey, is this guy's stats match up with who he is? And so they offered me a spot to go up there. And that was a game changer for me. You always talk about there's somebody bigger, faster, and stronger than you. It almost was like everybody on the team was bigger, faster, and stronger than me. I walk up there. I have my 2 catchers. One played at Stanford. One played at Miami. My second baseman was a Cal guy. My first baseman was from Northern Illinois. We actually played with each other at Legion Baseball when we were in high school. But I had Division I talent all around me. But I also had Division I talent I had to face on the mound. And it made me learn how to pitch. It gave me confidence. I have some really pretty good coaches as well too. My pitching coach was Jack Krawczyk. He pitched at USC. He ended up that year he was going to work, I believe, for Pat Murphy at the time at ASU. But it just gave me a different competitive vibe. I'm the person, like, if I'm going to play summer ball, I better be playing for something. I don't like going out and playing in the leagues that are local here. I just feel like, it just feels like it's not competitive enough for me. It's why I don't play 12-inch softball. It doesn't get my juices flowing if nobody takes it seriously. So I always tell guys, I told our guys, you gotta play. And I tell this in the recruiting speech I say all the time. The year that we finally sent a lot of our guys out, Jesse went out, Dylan went out, Jack Paulson went out to the Collegiate League in New York. We had Andy Breyer go to Kansas. Alex Cook went to Kansas. Colin Tremmel went to the Northwoods League. Another guy. We came back. Magically, we had our best year after that year. And it was amazing because we came back and I said, well, what'd you guys learn? And they said, Well, we got some new coaches. We learned some different pitches. We talked to different players on different teams and how they do some things. We started implementing that stuff into our program here. And that's what baseball is about, right? We all beg, borrow, steal from each other. And instead of one guy and me going to the conference and taking it back, now I have 15 of my players reaching out to X number of people, and they're bringing all that information back. And I tell all my players all the time, I say, guys, I don't know everything about the game of baseball. I do know quite a bit, I said, but like, let's implement some of the stuff that you want to do. And they all came back. We sat down. We said, okay, Lucas Gregory, for example, came back with a changeup that he had never had before. And I said, well, where'd you learn that? And he goes, well, I did it in summer a little bit. And I said, okay. And I said, well, let's continue that. And he had his best year, his senior year, after going to play in the NYCBL. And so, you mentioned the Garcia kid from Chapman, and I had the privilege. I'm on the ABCA All-American committee for Division III. So we went out there to Iowa last year, and we're sitting there and we're looking at his numbers, and I go, these aren't real. And his coach, Scott Laverty, is actually on the committee. It was his first year with us, and he goes, yeah, he's pretty good. Fast forward 48 hours. And my wife and I are sitting watching a couple of games in Iowa, and I'm like, man, this guy's a stud. He's going to be a top round pick next year. And Scott says the same thing. Like, the more you play, the better you're going to be, and the more you play high competitive baseball, the better you're going to be. And that is why collegiate leagues around the country are super important. I think that. We use in our recruiting speech, we talk about, we practice sometimes. Yeah, we work on the mechanics of the game and stuff like that, but you get better at playing baseball by playing baseball. And that's what allows, those collegiate leagues allow you to do that.
Yep. Kevin, when you played professionally with the Mets, what are things that you brought from professional playing baseball to your young college students right now that they gravitate towards or lean towards?
Yeah, so a lot of it has to do with preparing yourself physically. We talk about the importance of treating your body right. In professional baseball, in college baseball, people do college things, right? They're going to go out on Friday and Saturday night, and then they're not going to do anything on Sunday, and then all of a sudden it's Monday and they have to kind of regentrify. Professional baseball is not like that, at least in my, especially in the minor leagues. I mean, yeah, you have your guys that went out and do their things, but you have to be ready every single day. So we talk to our players about taking care of their bodies, getting bigger, and treating themselves so they can have the best possible experience on the field. Another thing we really do, we talk about is preparing yourself. A scout in advance. That's what happened in professional baseball. We'd sit down with our pitching coach. In the minor leagues, you don't know much about guys, but you can look at stats, you can look at certain things. And especially the past couple of years, we've really kind of taken an opportunity to sit down with our players and say, hey, we just can't show up to the park anymore, guys. Our league is too good. We need to have a game plan going in. And they don't usually do that in high school. They sure don't do that in summer baseball in high school with the travel baseball. So we have to teach them how to prepare. Last year with the freshmen, we get to the games, and the 6 games we played with them, I have a guy that shifts the infielders. I shift the outfielders. His other assistant coach, he's calling the pitches. And we use a different chart system. One of the name band charts that you can get to kind of view some of the hitting tendencies of other players. And I'm moving the outfielders, and my freshman right fielder comes in. He goes, Coach, you've been dead on the whole day. I haven't had to move. And I said, well, that's what I'm talking about, being prepared a little bit. It's something that they've all had to play, and at high school, there's not a lot of preparedness. So that's something that I picked up at professional level, because I was the same way going into college. Like, I showed up on the mound and I knew who was good, and that was it. And now it's everybody has tendencies, and to make yourself a better player and a better team overall, you have to do some advanced scouting and advanced work.
Yep. Well, listen, we're about getting to our time limit. So, Dave, what other questions or question you may have for Kevin? And then I'll have one last one.
Yeah, and Kevin, I guess I'm probably going to ask this when I put my professor hat on. I don't know if my wife considers me a professor, but I'm fascinated, and you actually kind of started to go down this road with the analytics in baseball,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you just talked about the shift, and I'm very lucky that I live in a town that our high school baseball coach, I can volunteer assist, and he got drafted out of our high school here, and he's very much in tune with all of this, right? When we talk about the Rapsodo and all this. Now, this could be overwhelming, right? So how much technology and analytics are you using with your programs? We instituted in the NYCBL, if we were going to play this this year, we were going to allow some of the bat sensors, because some of the blast motion data, that if you had a young man that was coming here, that they could have used that and you could have tracked, which would have helped you even when you're back in Wisconsin. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Technology has changed our game. If you look on Twitter, constantly, it's a battle between old school and technology. There's no in between, right? We use a lot of video at our place. I'll be very honest. I am old school. I work on mechanics. I work on throwing, over the plate. One of the things of working at maybe our level compared to a Division I level, we may have at Oshkosh, right now we have 5 or 6 guys that run the ball up their mid to upper 80s. At a Division I level, they have 5 or 6 guys that run the ball to, mid 90s, maybe even a little bit above. They just have more guys that do the velocity. So I think the Rapsodo and stuff like that, it's a great tool to see spin rate. And the challenge is the players want to know all that stuff. As a coach, I think we have to shield them a little bit from it, and we have to learn and say, okay, I'm going to take Colin's information, and I'm going to come up with a plan so I can tell him what he needs to do to maybe enhance it or utilize his spin rate better, utilize that velocity, utilize the dip in the ball, instead of just saying, hey, Colin, here's your information. What do you think? So I think we have to, there's a little bit of a give and take there. We were purchasing the Rapsodo. We had just gotten approved right before we got shut down for the season. And being in a state system, and you guys maybe could appreciate this, working with the SUNY system, we have to jump through about 6-7 hoops to buy stuff. And so we were jumping through those hoops to get to the Rapsodo, and because it was over a certain amount, we were going to have to get a bid on it and everything. So it delayed the process a little bit this year, but we'll have it going into fall. I'm excited to start looking for it. But I tell our guys, I said, you can throw 90, 91 miles an hour and get hit around the baseball park, but you can throw 82. And as long as you know how to locate and have 3 different pitches, you're going to be okay. The biggest thing for me, the shifts and everything like that, I was totally against it. And I hired a guy this year. He was a coach at Northwood University, came over to us, and we actually played against each other. He was the second baseman at Stevens Point. And he says, Kevin, let me do the shifts. I said, we're going to give up maybe a hit or two or there, a game, but in the end of it, we're going to make more outs than anything. And I said, okay, I'll trust you. So we got the charts. We started doing the shifts. In 6 games that we played, there was 1 ground ball that he misjudged, and it went through after he moved it. Everything else, we had ground balls go up. I'm like, oh, that's a base hit. And our second baseman standing right there. We have the outfielder, all of a sudden, the outfielders, we move in down the line, and there's a fly ball, and he goes, oh, that's a double, and our outfielder's standing right there. So, in 6 games this year, 100% believer, and I'll use it for the rest of the time as a head coach. I think it gives confidence to the players. I talk about this. I spoke at the Wisconsin Baseball Coaches Convention. Every travel organization right now is using blast motion, is using Rapsodo, is using the metrics, right? As colleges, we have to keep up with the Joneses almost. So we have to start implementing that stuff, because for the last 3 or 4 years, they've been using all that stuff. One of my best friends runs probably the premier travel organization in the state of Wisconsin here, GRB, and he uses all of those tools. And so when my players come to my program from his, I want them to continue on with it. I don't want them to take a step backwards. And so it costs a little bit of money, but in the end of it, I think Players want it because that's what they are becoming used to. You know, the days of, I have Twitter solely for just looking at Twitter. I don't tweet. I just started an Instagram account because apparently everybody's doing that now. I know I'm way behind the times with regards to a lot of that stuff, but you know, we're starting to use it more and more, and we're starting to see the benefits of it more and more as well too.
Well, I think there's a lot of pressure up and down the line. You know, the words you kind of put yourself between a premier program in the state and then professional baseball. The scouting, so much of it's done by metrics now. And earlier today, we had a CrushCast out with Tim Kirchian and talked a lot about the importance of summer baseball, like you did too. We talked about the draft the other night, all the analytics and metrics, but not one mention of character and what kind of player are you getting out there. But well, listen, Kevin, one last question for you, and then we'll air off here and we'll get it out this week, is where do you see your program going in the next 2 years with a 2-year process, you know, with a setback with pandemics? What's your greatest challenges out there?
The greatest challenge right now is getting everybody back on the same page. You know, we are gonna have kids coming from all walks of life. I mean, if you look at our demographics of our actual team, 50% of our players live in and around Chicago. A few of them actually live in Chicago, and they're not doing anything right now in and around the city of Chicago. We've had a couple of guys go out to Iowa. You know, all the gains, one of the big challenges, one of the big worries I actually face is all the gains that our guys made in the weight room, you know, on the field, all the stuff that we did. We don't know if that's going to be negated because of this. You know, I called each guy, you know, once or twice during this off time. You know, either my assistant called them or I called them just to see what they were doing. And some of the guys were like, you know, we're doing push-ups and we're going for light jogs. I mean, that was their exercise for late March into April. So getting back into the fall is going to be very interesting. Our university just announced we are coming back. The entire university is coming back. There are going to be some different restrictions that are going to be going on. But, you know, how do we get everybody back to where we were? I've told all our guys, you know, this is a very serious thing that's going on, guys. Like, you know, baseball is not at the forefront. You know, your health and safety is number one because you want to keep everybody in your family safe. And so we'll figure it out when we get back on campus here. And for me, it's just how do we develop, continuing going forward. I'm hoping that the NCAA gives us a little bit more time in the fall. You know, that's kind of my hope. Maybe we get 6 weeks, 7 weeks to work with our players. You know, we don't have to go play games or anything, but the practice time in the fall, getting people back on is going to be very important for us.
Well, good. Well, let's call it a wrap for today, gentlemen. Dave Maloney from the NYCBL, thanks for coming on and co-hosting with me. And of course, Kevin, it's always a pleasure. You and I share some phone calls over time. We'll save another phone call for not a podcast and talk signals.
Sounds like a plan.
And but listen, we should have this out by the end of the week. And let me say thank you very much on behalf of Coach Tomasiewicz and you, Wisconsin Oshkosh team here. And we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you. Have a good day.